Hello there. Okay, so I'm going to talk and make a few comments, a little bit of a commentary about the war. I hope there is someone there. Let me know if I'm coming across in some sort of way. All right, so let me start talking. I wanted to, everyone is talking about it for the last 2 or 3 days since Thursday. I wanted to talk about it yesterday, but I couldn't. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to say because I was very, very confused about the role of what had happened and the role of the president in this. I was very downhearted about what had happened. I was very low. I was talking to my daughter about it, saying how this was a really serious thing that had happened for the future of the world, really. And my daughter, who's very kind, said, well, Mommy, you can't, I mean, you can't, you have to, there are lots of good people in the world. There are lots of good things happening too, and we can't do anything about these things. And there is no pointing in thinking about it and depressing yourself and you know but I said I can't. I wasn't able to sleep that night. I was very feeling very low during the whole day, and I said it's just that I find it myself personally, I find it very, very difficult not to get involved emotionally. I find it very difficult to be able to just look the other way and say, well, there are other good things. I think sometimes the heart cries out for justice or for some explanation. Anyway, so I think I can. So I was totally unable to say anything about it because I couldn't figure it out in my mind. Okay, so I think I can say a few things today. First of all, we expected, I thought that this was going to happen, but perhaps it came a little bit earlier than expected. It could have been averted, I think, or perhaps not. And this is why I don't know the answers, and that is why I'm confused. Perhaps it could not have been averted after all. But we were told, you see, that President Trump was involved in negotiations, right, between Israel and Iran. We were told for a while that in the case of well, we knew that he had tried negotiations with Russia and so on, okay, with the Ukraine conflict. But in the Middle East conflict, we were told that really for a while that President Trump was not really all that keen on President Netanyahu, that he didn't appreciate being pressured into launching an attack against Iran, that he had started negotiations with Iran, that indeed, and that was the discussion at the time. Indeed, the national security advisor, Mike Waltz, was removed, yes, from power because he had been, apparently, this is what we were told, apparently planning behind the president's back with Israel and so on. So he was removed. President Trump, in responding to many questions that journalists were asking him, was saying that he would it would be better to avoid the conflict, that he said, we are fairly close to an agreement. We are having very good discussions and so on and so forth. You remember that? Okay. And then the attack happened. And so the question then moved on to, did he know or didn't he know? Okay, was there a collusion? Okay, because if there was a collusion, he would have been seen as duplicitous, okay, leading Iran on negotiations, apparently, negotiating to, well, just as a leading on, really, that he was that he was planning to be with Israel, and he was planning this attack behind everyone's back. So that is one possibility. If not, so that he appears then as very duplicitous, as lying, and so on. So that would be bad. Yeah. The other alternative that I couldn't figure out was, if there was no collusion, if he wasn't really trying to do that, planning behind, the negotiations bit, then the problem is, who is running the foreign policy of the United States? Was he attempting to do something, and people in his administration doing something else? So that Netanyahu, whether he liked it or not, Netanyahu could just go off and do his own thing, whatever he wanted. For a time, it seemed that Trump was investing in diplomacy. So the question is, after what happened, was he really investing in diplomacy, or was he involved really in torpedoing his own negotiations? And that was the question that I struggled with all day yesterday, listening to just about everything that I could listen to. Okay, so let's see if I can bring this if I can manage to comment on this. Did Trump know that this was going on? Was this being planned in secret? Were the negotiations a ruse? Yeah, so we have to try to separate the signals from the noise and see what we... now, some people say that although Israel says this is because of we cannot allow Iran to have nuclear weapons, that this is really not true, that that is an excuse, that this has been planned since, well, at least since 1984. People are pointing to comments precisely from Netanyahu and many others that Iran was developing nuclear weapons, and this goes back to 1984. Every so often we hear the same thing. It's not about Iran developing nuclear weapons, some people say. It is about hegemony, the hegemony of the West in that part of the world. And they say that the ultimate is regime change, meaning to actually sort of destroy the Iranian nation as it is now and make something else out of it, or the changing of regime, or others suggest that ultimately it is really attacking BRICS, the BRICS idea, yes, so that Iran being the weakest link there, the other two being Russia and China, that by attacking or destroying Iran in some sort of way, the nation state, that you could actually get to BRICS. This is rather complex, but okay, so that it is just because Iran is developing nuclear weapons doesn't seem to be the whole story there. We have been hearing it, as we know, for, since 1984. Now, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had, when this happened, made some official declarations saying that no, the United States was not involved in it, so please don't attack our bases anywhere or anything because we had nothing to do with it. But then at the same time, President Trump posted on Truth Social. I don't have it here, but you can find it anywhere. Most commentators just have it there for you. But he was actually, it was actually quite a reckless way of saying that. Well, we gave them the chance and they didn't take it, so all that sort of thing. Okay, so it seems that he, because of his tweets, that he has dug himself into a hole here. How can he dig himself out of it? Why? Because it does appear that he was actually involved in, he knew that it was being planned. He had been planned this particular attack for about 8 months, I believe. So he went back to the Biden administration. There is no possible way that he wouldn't have known. But the point is that how does he dig himself out of this hole now? Because even if he says now, look, really, I was conducting negotiations in good faith, yes, but I was trapped into this. Even if he were to say that, it no longer makes any difference, really. We know that the United States is supporting Israel in this endeavor. So he has now very little credibility as a peacemaker. That he said at one time that he wanted to be known as a peacemaker. I think his credibility is gone. There are really well-founded suspicions that he was either plotting with Israel, okay, that he was plotting with Israel, or that it was either he was plotting himself, okay, with Israel, or this was being done behind his back. And now he's trapped. Either one, he's trapped. I think that his Truth Social post is a way of him trying to say that no, I was actually planning it, okay, because what is very difficult for him, I think, psychologically to admit is that he doesn't want anyone to think that he was being trapped. That goes to his ego, okay? He would rather, I think, appear duplicitous and even a liar or whatever. He would rather have that, be accused of that, than of being too foolish to have allowed himself to be entrapped. That I don't think he can come to terms with it, because that goes to his ego. Yeah. If the Israelis say that negotiations were a distraction, they have openly said that all the time they were being planned with the United States, these attacks. And I think that is something that Trump would prefer, rather than having been tricked. Okay. Netanyahu openly thanked him for his cooperations and so on. Of course, Netanyahu will have his reasons also to thank him or not to thank him. This is what is so complicated. But what does he do now? What does President Trump do now? Well, he can say, yes, I was involved, as the Israelis say that he was, or no, our negotiations were in good faith, and this was not a setup. This was not a setup, and Netanyahu tripped me with this. He cannot accept that. He will never admit to that, even if that was the case. So what I find is that both alternatives are pretty awful now. One, that he's a true he's a two-faced, duplicitous liar, and the other that he has no control over his administration. So which one is worse? He is in a hole, really. In the meantime, okay, so Iran reacted. It took them about 3 hours or so, and they started reacting first minimally and then with quite a lot of force. What can come out of this? Well, the Strait of Hormuz could be closed or something. Oil prices would spike then, yeah. But what is worrying is that, as all military people tell us, it's very easy to start a war sometimes, but it's not very easy to end it because you don't know which way things are going to go. And so is very, very bruising events that have taken place, which are taking us all, I think the whole world, in a direction that really nobody can predict. And that is the worry. I think it's also putting the West against the rest of the world in a war that might not be possible to avoid anymore, that will escalate into a third world war. And we cannot predict really what is going to happen. So that attack by Israel, I think, is probably the first day of something very dark and very bad, really. And very bloody. And who will be able to stop it? The attack on Iran has been planned for a very long time. Yes, it goes back to the clean break strategy of these countries in the Middle East that had to be destroyed. Yeah, and we can think of all of them, or that there were 7 countries altogether. And Iran is the one that is left there, sort of taking a stand, I suppose, against Israel openly and as a peer power. So it is the last one to be defeated. So I feel I was listening to Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and he was practically in despair. He was so downhearted about the whole thing. He said, I was in total despair this morning after the first night of the attacks. All these, while negotiations were taking place, there were going to be quite a few negotiations. Today was going to be the start of the second round or something like that. Of course, that is not going to happen. And he points to President Trump's post, and I don't have it in front of me here, but he says, well, basically, says Professor Sachs. He says basically what he is saying is, yes, negotiations, well, this is what we mean by negotiations. You either agree with us or we kill you. And when we kill you, we are going to gloat about it. We have the most, basically what he, in a way, he said, basically we have the most lethal weapons in the planet, in the world. And he says, and Israel has a lot of them, and there is more to come, more death and destruction to come, I suppose. And in his despair, Professor Sachs says this, and this is the President of the United States, for God's sake, talking in these terms. I think it's the President Trump seems to be incapable of nuance. He's like an 8-year-old. He speaks his mind, but his mind changes according to several factors, and he seems to be incapable of diplomatic language, of nuance. We're talking about the world at war. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the Iranian people, saying that this was happening because they wanted to free them. They are enslaved by this autocratic dictatorship, and so they want to free them to, become something else as a nation. Well, the idea Israel has 8 million people, Iran has about 100 million people. This idea that they do this in order to free them, it's just a little bit too much. Anyway. I also saw the Ayatollah Khomeini addressing the people there, saying, I don't remember what he was saying, but they were let the world know that we were attacked and now we have to retaliate, something like that. And in that meeting, you see everybody saying, death to this and death to that and so on. And I want to warn you not to think of these people who are, it's the same with the North Koreans and people who, you have everyone shouting and agreeing with the speaker. And I am concerned that people think that these people are robots or they are stupid and that they can't think for themselves just because they create a sort of a chorus line, repeating it all the time. I don't think it's because they're robots. I don't think it's because they're stupid. I really think it's a ritual. I think it's a cultural, a civilizational way of, it's a ritual. Okay, so we have our own, so when the president or the king comes into the room, we stand up. This is not the best example, but there are rituals that we follow in our culture. And in the Persian culture and in the East is to repeat these slogans every time that the speaker addresses people. It doesn't mean that people can no longer think, because that will make us believe they're all kind of stupid or something. And that is not the case. It's a ritual, okay? But to say that they're going to free them, well, he said something like, in our history, we have always been together or something like that, Netanyahu said. Well, not really, but yes, there was a period in time during the Roman Empire when actually the Persian Empire took many of the Jews being persecuted. That is true, but that's quite a few centuries ago. There has been to free them. Well, you see, we have to go back to 1953. In 1953, Iran or Persia was a democracy. Okay, it may not have been a democracy exactly as we have it in the West, but it is an Eastern country, so the history and the culture and the civilization is different. Okay, so but they had elected a prime minister. The people have. And that prime minister decided that he would nationalize the oil of Iran. And the West, the usual leaders, the usual countries, decided that wasn't a very good idea for them. And so they did the usual thing, a coup and so on. They put the Shah of Iran there. You remember the Shah? Well, probably you don't because you're younger than I am. I remember the Shah of Iran. I remember how popular he was in the West when he married Farah Diva, a beautiful lady. He had been previously married to Soraya, beautiful lady with beautiful green eyes, but she was not able to give him an heir to the throne. And so at one point when this was I don't know exactly when it must have been in the late 50s or early 60s, I think. And when one time she went to Paris, that was it. She was not to come back. And he married Farah Diva, who gave him an heir, 3 children, I believe. And so the Shah was put there by the West, and the West could count on him, except that in 1979, the people rebelled against the Shah. And what happened was that he was the 1979 revolution by the Ayatollah Khomeini and all that, the Cultural Revolution. And I remember that the Shah was not accepted in any Western country. He thought that he could go and live in the United States, and the United States did not allow him to live there. And he was for a while not being accepted anywhere. I think he eventually ended up in Switzerland. I'm not sure, but he died of cancer, I believe, in Switzerland. But he was dropped by the West as hot potato. He wasn't welcomed anywhere. So to say we come for the West or Israel to come to address the Iranian people and say we come to free you, perhaps it could be in a different way than how it was done in the past. I am worried. I am worried because I can see that Israel is going to continue. It might be, we don't know how all this is going to end up. It could be the destruction of Israel. Don't know what would happen to Iran. Would they achieve regime change or turn it into a Western society? But even if that was done successfully, from the top, would that necessarily cease? That would probably start a civil war there. I don't know. It's anyway. The effect is that because it looks both alternatives. Okay, whether President Trump was negotiating in good faith and he wasn't informed, which seems unlikely now, but whether he wasn't informed, that is one alternative. It means that he is not in charge, or whether he was using negotiations as a ruse and a trap in order, remember the Minsk agreements and all that, the same thing. One way or the other, my point is that he is in a hole, and I think he has now lost credibility in the world. How many countries in the world now will sit at the table with the United States and negotiate in good faith, or think that these negotiations mean anything at all, or that the United States signature on treaties means anything at all? This is the danger now. The tragic aspect of it all is basically, well, I don't know, perhaps you don't agree that it is tragic, but the point is that now he's, I think he has destroyed his presidency, or damaged it beyond repair. In the eyes of the world, at any rate, I don't think if countries sit with the United States table to negotiate anything, they will be thinking, well, sure, we'll sit down and negotiate, but they will not take the United States seriously, or their word seriously. This is a real danger now. At the same time, you see, and this is the problem, because at the same time we see, have you heard of, well, in America you have heard, but perhaps in other countries you haven't, all these riots inside the United States. Yesterday, Saturday, they were called, the logo, the title of all the demonstrations was "No King" or no Kings, or something like that. We see against the president. So we see, this is what I cannot figure out. You see, perhaps you can help me here. Because we see that within the United States, there are forces, the same forces that were there since 2016, working against him, wanting to undermine his presidency. In other words, there is something from within the country that is being organized against him. But why? If he is doing the bidding of the powers that be, by helping Israel, by doing all this planning with Israel, why would they nevertheless organize these demonstrations? There are some people saying that people are being paid $200 a day. I don't know whether this is true or not, whether they are making it up. But in any case, they are organized. Yeah, they are not spontaneous. And so what I can't figure out is, if he's doing the powerfuls, the oligarchies bidding with Israel, why would they, encourage these and manage and promote these demonstrations? The two are opposites. Surely, if he's doing that, if he's helping Israel, they would be happy with him. This is what the oligarchy wants, right? So why are they organizing this from within? So could it be, it just seems impossible, but could it be that he was, after all, negotiating in good faith? But that's, well, that is possible, because I think that those are his instincts, but it is almost impossible that he wouldn't have known what was being planned. That seems kind of impossible, that he was left totally in the dark, like a child, sort of, that he didn't have. Perhaps they told him that a sort of half truth or a half lie. I cannot reconcile these two things of him doing the bidding of the oligarchs and and helping, their interests in the Middle East, and at the same time having people demonstrating against him and trying to bring him down. How do you do these two things at the same time? So I have no idea. I know that Tucker Carlson, who was very much with him, has warned him that he is betraying the America First movement. Now, Tucker Carlson, who's very influential, really, was with him because he believed in this America First thing, and he's saying that he's saying in so many words that what he's doing now is actually betraying this America First. Because Tucker Carlson, I don't think, sees the interests of Israel as necessarily, they can, it's not that they have to be contradictory, but not necessarily the same as the United States. Perhaps some things that the United States can do to help Israel might be against the interest of the country, of the United States. But we are talking about different things here, because when we talk about the United States as a country and the interests of that country is different from the United States representing the Western, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-whatever, American empire, yeah, which is what the oligarchy is concerned with. Not necessarily with the people of the United States. Yeah. So I don't know what to make of all this. I feel rather depressed about it all, really. So Tucker Carlson is actually warning him that what he calls the warmongers are taking the country in a different direction that is not in the interests, maybe in the interests of the empire, but not in the interests of the United States. So we'll just have to wait and see what is going to happen here. Let me know what you think. I have no answers whatsoever. I have questions. That's all I have, and people have different ideas about reasons and everything else. But we will know. We will know in the next few days how everything continues and develops. I just think it's such a terrible tragedy of what is happening in the Middle East. All those countries destroyed. And I have to say this too, that as a Catholic and therefore as a Christian, I'm really concerned because, for example, now in Syria, the government that was put there by the West, which were the old jihadists, are actually just, crucifying Christians all over the place, which was not happening during al-Assad, the Syrian president deposed, yeah. They were free to exercise their religion, and now they're not, after the West's intervention. The same in Iraq and the same in many other places. So I don't know. It's certainly not in the interest of Christians necessarily. Anyway, that is all I have for today. Let me know what you think. Jody Carithus, he's a bull in a china shop. Yeah, yes. I believed for a while that his instincts were, what he was saying was the truth, that he really didn't want wars. He was against, let's make a deal kind of thing. That is what I'm sick and tired of, the word make a deal, by the way. Make a deal, could he use every now and then another word, let's have an agreement or a treaty or a pact, or I don't know, a million things, but just make a deal, which sounds so transactional, so business-like. I give you this and you give me that, and win-win, or it lacks wisdom. It's too transactional. Not everything is a business deal. Talking about running the world with all its complications and different cultures and different civilizations and different histories, it's not about a deal. You have to be wise enough to rise above certain things and look at the big picture, a bird's eye picture. And he doesn't seem to have this. But not very many presidents have. Perhaps the last one was John Kennedy, really, when he spoke about, peace in the world and so on. But the others, every single one of them, they just seem to lack just a little bit of necessary wisdom. I perhaps is the way the electoral system works or something, that the people who win are the people normally with no moral constraints. And if you have no moral constraints against a person who has moral constraints, you're going to win because you have no barriers. You can do whatever. And it seems we are going from bad to worse. I did believe him. I don't know that I'm repeating myself. I did believe that his instincts were to attain peace, so then he could be seen as the peacemaker, and that went with his personality. So it could be that perhaps he was tricked. He was told, a quarter of the truth, but he's not humble enough to say, I was tricked and I fell for it. He will never admit to that. It goes against his ego. It would be so good if, our leaders had, at some point or other, some sense of humility and just say, I did this and it was wrong. This is why it happened. Just be clear and honest and straightforward with the American people. Yeah. So this is my talk for today. I don't know whether there is anybody there. Jody, you are there. Okay, thank you very much for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.